Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment? This is a very good discussion, but I'd like to add one element which I think is very important. Universities operate, as you know, on an academic calendar. Things happen once a year and then proceed. And so depending on your goals, I think it's very important that as we have this discussion and we develop a fuller understanding, someone should be sitting down and making a timeline. For example, and let me give you a concrete example. For example, if you actually wanted classes to commence in the fall of 2013, then there are things that must happen on a certain schedule, whether you have an interim president or what have you. And so there may be actions that the Board of Governors needs to take, even in the absence of a Board of Trustees or an interim president or a full president, simply because the calendar dictates it. So let me give you an example. So for example, if you would like classes to begin in fall of 2013, when are you going to recruit students for those classes? You recruit them this fall. And so if that is a board goal, then we need to think about getting appropriate recruitment structures into place as quickly as possible when students are making decisions. And that's just one example of the type of things I think we always need to be thinking at least a year ahead, right, and say where we want to be a year from now. That will dictate some of your actions today.
I mean, our goal is to start, fall of 13. I have a question. Let me ask you this. I mean, by the time we set the new board, and one thing I like to add is, since I chair the nominating committee, I can tell you that committee will not put anybody on that board that we don't think is qualified. As a matter of fact, we want to be overqualified. It is just so important for us to get the highest of quality of people that want to serve their country and want to serve the students, and is a calling for them to apply. And we will take our time to get the right people in place. Now, I don't know what that is going to take, a week, 2 weeks, 5 weeks, and I will call on the Chancellor through his office to reach out throughout the country, whatever means, to people that would like to help us get started with this new university. You're absolutely right. My question is, for instance, as Provost Glover said, can we hire an interim president before the new board gets in place?
Well, that authority was delegated to the boards of trustees in a board regulation. I realize this is an unprecedented situation that we find ourselves in, but also recognize that Florida Polytechnic University, while it may be a university today, the funds that it has are not, won't be appropriated until July 1 of 2012. I thought that, I was hopeful that we were on the timeline to have a board in place before July 1 of 2012. There are carry forward funds for the university, part of which under the bill could be used for the ongoing project, the Science, Innovation, and Technology Building.
I assure you, since I've been involved in with the trustee committee, it is an unbelievable time-consuming deal, because it really, you have to get people, you have to give it to different board members. Us board members can't talk to each other. So we have to interview the people that apply individually. Then we need to get together again and pass and get our board. This is going to take time. This is going to take time for us to get the best. Yes, tomorrow we can appoint, those 4 that just came in. He says, here, as of today, you're a board member. That is not serving our state, and I don't think this governor or the legislators, that's what they want. We want to do it right. And for us to do it right, what do we have to do for us to get us started? And I'm not suggesting tomorrow I have interim president, far from it. So I'm just kind of, want to make sure that we do this process right. Our chairman has been very clear to us, to myself, and to this committee that he will do whatever it takes. He will call the board for decision-making as quick as we want. And our committee, this committee, and also trustee committee is committed. It's just the time it takes. We have 4 applications. Usually when we do a board of trustees of our 11 university, we have 40 applications that we choose from. And sometimes we don't even take those 40 applications. We ask to be re-advertised time and time over. We just did that with FAMU. We extended twice because we thought it was extremely important to have the right person for the right university. So give me some leeway. Maybe at some point, and maybe we turn it, we say to UF, since what they have, it's very clear, and later on I'm going to go over what the responsibility of UF is on that bill. As a matter of fact, it talks about hiring, and just so some of that we've got to talk about. We want to know is how we can expedite this. I think it is very important. We from the time that the governor signed into bill to now, we had to do a lot of background work. USF did an outstanding job with our staff to, as she says, day in, day out, try to put this thing together. But starting now, we want to make sure that we do get the students in the fall of 2013. I think that ought to be our goal because there are certain, was it 2015, did you say? We have 16, I'm sorry. 16. So, let me, no, I know, RB, you're next.
I just wanted to, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
RB Friedlander, Deputy General Counsel.
RB, would you please stand over there because we have people on the phone that are listening, and also we have for the channel.
Absolutely, thank you. You're very brave to give 2 lawyers a microphone. But I wanted to remind people that, and I think you did a wonderful job of recounting the elements of the bill, that there are a few items.
You step, yeah, thank you.
There are a few items that do require third party, and so I just wanted to reiterate that for like seeking the FCC license, what the bill requires is that we are required to cooperate with FPU's new board to go seek it, but that decision is in the hands of the FCC, for instance. I would remind you, which is relevant to this discussion, Mr. Beard's question, I think, as well, though, that USF retains under the law responsibility for campus operations and programs and so forth until June 30th. So we are still there. We obviously would want to do that in conjunction with the Board of Governors during this transition phase, but the law itself does provide us that time frame till June 30th of this year.
That's like another 5 weeks.
Yes, sir. That's why we need to come to you.
Yeah.
That's the question, I think.
Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me? That's the question that Dick had, and I've had that question as well. June 30th, effectively in the statute, we have a new university created.
Well, it was created actually effective April 20th at 5:38 p.m.
But June 30th, we no longer have interest in that university.
Well, the bill, the law says that we have continuing responsibility until June 30th. I think that's partly what we're here discussing today, is how that gets administered between now and the time the new board is established.
Some of our documents that we have, including Skanska, had a provision that we actually negotiated. Sorry,
I don't think that phone's working.
that we negotiated this clause in the Skanska contract, after we became involved, that basically automatically transfers the Skanska contract to our successor, which I assume then that would take place on July 1?
I'll let them do it, but
I'll put on my legal hat for just a moment.
That's scary.
Even on a bad day, I'm twice the attorney.
Looking for the lightning bolts?
From not a legal standpoint, but from a guy who's just trying to figure all of this out with everybody around the table, there are legal complications that have to be overseen. For example, today we're going to talk about some lease agreements, some of which are coming due, and who will decide whether those lease agreements are re-upped or not, and when? What's the right legal entity, since that's what is required to make those kind of calls? We're going to be talking about the possible extension of contract for the project manager for that massive construction project, which is underway and not going to take a pause while we figure all of this out. Who would be the legal entity to approve the extension of that project manager's contract, even though most, I'll refrain from all, but most agree it should be extended to make sure we continue on with the smooth construction project that we've got going. So at the end of the day, this being uncharted territory, in the norm, we would simply, the Board of Governors would defer those issues to the Board of Trustees and the President of the institution. It's interesting. I totally agree with what Provost Glover said. There are serious disadvantages to the position we find ourselves in that we have no president, no faculty, no staff, no students, no accreditation, and as of yet, no standalone on-site facilities. Having said that, one of the great advantages that we enjoy is that we have no president, no faculty, no staff, no students, no accreditation, and no standalone on-site facilities. The opportunities here are, right now, totally endless. Now, how do we navigate the interim? How do we get from where we are to where we want to be? And even including the very short-term time until we do get a Board of Trustees in place. But even then, a Board of Trustees has to turn to someone because just to get in a room and decide themselves where they go and what they do is going to be very difficult. So today, what we can do is get our arms around as many of these very short-term issues as we can, until which time we do have a Board of Trustees in place. And I also agree with our chair. That issue will be reconciled when we have adequate, high-quality people that can be recommended either from the Governor's office and from the Board of Trustees to do this. But until that happens, what is USF's position in all of this in terms of their good commitment to continue on, but having the appropriate delegated authority in order to operate in that capacity? So, and then, and I will end here, I promise, I believe, and staff has heard me say this on multiple occasions, I put myself in the position of a new Board of Trustee member for Florida Polytech. What would I want from the day I said yes and got this job? I would want, at the very least, an on-the-ground administrator that I could turn to know that every day one person was in charge from a chief executive position to be able to make these kinds of calls. We can call it an interim president. Perhaps it's not even that, because there's nothing to be president interim or full president over at this point. Maybe it just requires an on-the-ground administrator who has delegated Governor Beard that responsibility to make those kinds of daily calls necessary to continue to oversee the construction and can continue to work then with that board to call meetings, to give them agendas and do their work. That person needs a secretary, and I mean that in the very formal sense. The Board of Trustees will need a corporate secretary to do their work. Can't do it without it, to call the meetings, to keep the minutes. I know these things sound mundane, but they have to be in place under our system of government. Then I believe the new board from day one should be provided a skeleton administrative crew, a group of men and women who act as chief financial officer, because money is continuing to move. The money doesn't wait either for these things. It will have to continue to move. HR services. There will have to be hires made even in advance of a full president coming on board. The construction issue has got to be nailed down, and even though we have a project manager for the full project, we also have the services of people on the ground from the current Polytech who are providing some of those kinds of things. So what I would beg we do is take advantage of the fact that we do currently have a full complement at the USF campus of people who are already there, already engaged in these sorts of activities, and look to know what President Genschaft said is true, that those folks have all been guaranteed a year contract extension. Why not take advantage of that and put together a cadre of core people that can be provided to the new Board of Trustees on an interim basis? We're not tying that board to anyone or anything. They should have the ability over time, and the new president, to make those kinds of personnel decisions, but at least be able to provide that new board with a core element of folks who can help them through the first stages of transition, not only from the legal standpoint, but also just from the getting it up and running standpoint so that they can operate on their own.
Well, I'm going to add something, and you correct me, lawyers, that the UF will be providing the Polytechnic on hiring, accreditation, administration, and other matters as provided by the bill. Am I correct? At what point that comes into the effect?
Well, I think it comes into the fray now. Right now, under the bill, USF is required to maintain full campus operations and programs until June 30th. But because we're in uncharted waters, I think we need to work very closely with UF and with USF to identify a core set of individuals, as you just mentioned, to work through this transition until a new board is in place.
Yeah, it would seem to me that we've got a transition period, and that has a certain set of circumstances, and then we've got the going forward period, and we ought to divide it in there, and then you've got going forward, and you got transition here, and we ought to be able to clean this up a little bit, and then at least I can get my arm around it by dividing it into those two issues, and certainly the transition is number one, because that's in place.
I agree. Would you like to, do you have any other comments?
Sure.
All right, thank you so much. Any other questions from Vicki? Vicki, thank you so much. Good job. Okay, so next we will have Dr. Ignash will brief a student and faculty's issues at USF Poly and the new Polytechnic, as well as SACS and Board of Governors processes. Dr. Ignash, are you also going to talk about the SACS letter that was sent to President Genschaft?
I wasn't going to go into that. Can you hear me?
Sure. Just get a little bit closer to it,
In
yes.
detail, I was going to spend a little more time talking about the SACS process, including Board of Governors process for going forward with the new Florida Poly.
That's fine. What I will do is I will ask Dr. Genschaft or her staff to comment on the letter that President Genschaft received.
Okay. If we could go to the next slide, please. This is basically the outline for what I'll be talking about. In the first few bullet points, the first 5 sort of cover the transition period we were talking about, and the last 2, which I will take together, cover the going forward process. Currently, we have about 800 FTE students, 80 faculty, 54 administrators, 47 staff, and 160 OPS staff on the USF Poly campus in Lakeland. Just so you get an idea of what numbers we're talking about in terms of faculty and staff, I think that's important. The impact on current students. USF's teach-out plan will be submitted to SACS this mid-June. They are committed to teaching out the USF Poly students on the Lakeland campus, and this is very important because many of those students are place-bound. SACS requires a teach-out plan, and that plan must include how students will be helped to complete their programs of study with minimal disruption or additional expense. It also requires that faculty and staff will be redeployed or helped to find new employment. SACS also requires signed copies of any teach-out agreements with other institutions, and this is also important, arrangement for the storing of student records and disposition of financial resources and other assets. There are other requirements too, such as the date of closing and notifying people how that will happen. So, USF is in process. I think in about 3 weeks or so, they will have this plan to SACS. They've been working hard on it. As we mentioned earlier, USF plans to teach out the students in the existing programs on the joint use facility in Lakeland through the summer of 2015, by which time current students should be finished with their programs of study. USF expects to maintain the pattern of course scheduling that has been normal for USF Poly students, including summer sessions. Programs will officially close as they are taught out, and those, for the Board of Governors, this means that we will take note of that in our program inventory so that we keep current. Although academic responsibility for the USF Poly programs now lies with USF colleagues on colleges on the Tampa campus, the USF Poly version of the programs will remain in place in Lakeland until all students have completed their degrees. Regarding the continuity of student services, there have been questions, especially about financial aid and advising. There will be no impact upon students during the teach-out, and again, this is compliant with SACS requirements. Financial aid, including VA benefits, has always been administered directly, centrally from Tampa, so that will not be affected. Regarding faculty, regular tenured and tenure-earning full-time faculty are being integrated into the academic units on the Tampa campus. Visiting faculty get 3-year appointments, 1 to 3 years. We'll have appointments through 2012-13 unless they have already completed that maximum 3-year appointment period. Most USF Poly faculty will remain physically in Lakeland at least for the first year. This next part I think is important. Tenure-earning faculty, those on track to earn tenure, will receive the appropriate mentoring according to the practice of their new department as they work toward tenure. So the teach-out will continue through 2015. Regular USF Poly faculty will reside in USF colleges and departments, and their assignments will be made by their new academic units. USF Poly faculty will be expected to participate in the teach-out, but will likely have possibly some additional assignments in Tampa. Okay. The long-term, I do need to mention, a staffing plan for the teach-out is also in development. Staff not needed to support the teach-out, and there will be some, will be assigned to Tampa for at least the fiscal year 2012-13. So they are being taken care of as well. There are currently 18 tenured faculty on the USF Poly campus in Lakeland. Long-term plans for the USF presence in Lakeland. As we stated earlier, USF plans to vacate the joint use facility classrooms and space as programs are being taught out. Okay. I'm going to quickly turn my attention now to the going forward part. Are there any questions on the transition part?
Could I believe what you just went through answers the questions in the SACS letter, because the SACS letter asks the University of South Florida how students, faculty, and staff are taken care of. And whatever happens with the Florida Polytechnic will be a completely separate application or completely separate discussion. So we have taken care of the SACs, or you said in 3 weeks we'll have it finished, and Kathleen Moore is our guru for everything SACs. So we're all set. We're all set with this letter.
President Getchaf, do we have the 10 million that's been allocated for, or that you've got to do the teach out? Is that enough money to cover it?
No, it isn't. But the reason that Representative McKeel and I did a press conference is because he helped to write this portion, and it's in proviso language, which says that if there isn't enough money during this time, that we work with the Florida Polytechnic University Board of Trustees to work out an agreement so that this would be supplemented.
Mr. Chairman, that's a very important point, and only one of a number of questions that we've been not grappling with, because I think the path is rather clear, but I think not only how those personnel will be paid going forward, because the 10 million is not enough to cover all of the people who will be under that additional year contract, but also we'll be talking before we're finished. I'm sorry, Dr. Ignash, I'm going somewhere else, but we'll be back to you. When we get into issues of cost of services to continue certain elements that have begun already that need to continue forward, when University of South Florida is stepping up to say, we'll continue to do that, there's a clear expectation that those are services that they are paying for that would have to be covered downstream by Florida Polytech. I'm only saying that because when we leave here today, everybody needs to have their eyes wide open that the amount of money that the Florida Polytech has in its budget is going to be tapped for a variety of these issues over time. That shouldn't come as a shock to anyone, but I think it's just imperative that people realize that this is not being done out of the goodness of their bull's heart, nor should it be. These are services, and they provide services to an array of other institutions, and there's costs for services that have to be paid. That's the way the organization operates. So before we leave here today, I think it's imperative that everybody understand that whether it's what will be a rather significant amount of money to cover the cost of this year extension and contract for all faculty and staff of the USF branch, but the other services that will have to be covered as well all have price tags associated with them, and it is everybody's, I think, understanding that those would be borne by the Florida Polytech budget, whether it is the carry-forward money from that is associated with the Florida Polytech or the general operating budget of the Florida Polytech, the recurring dollars. That source can be determined, but that would be the place to which we would turn to cover the costs associated.
Okay, Governor Tripp?
I think it's important, excuse me, that we have a budget now so we can start to understand that. That budget may change, but can we get that? I don't think we should just talk about 10 million isn't enough and we're going to spend more money. We need to decide a base budget now as to what we know, and then we can adjust that budget through this committee as we're going forward, and then we won't have surprises.
I totally agree with you.
No surprises.
Yeah, no surprises.
No surprises.
Yes.
I like surprises.
We're going to put a sign in, no surprises. So we're going to, I think you brought up a very good point. I think we ought to put a budget together, what this teach out is going to cost, also the services that the University of Florida is going to provide. What does that cost? I have somebody raised their hand. John?
Yes, sir. I've heard at least 3 times now the reference to the carry forward. So I just want to caution everybody, you can only spend $1 once. And there's a lot of...
Not in the university system.
There appears to be a lot of wants for that $1. We just need to be cognizant moving forward about management expectation of what that account looks like at the end of the day, because I've already heard 3 comments, well, we can go to the carry forward. There's only so much carry forward, and that will drain to zero, or some other number, and who knows what that is.
That's why we need a budget. And we don't have any idea right now. You know, I heard, well, we got 10 million and we got to do all of this. I haven't seen how it works, and we need that so that we can be where you want to be, John, and that is, what have we got to spend and how can we spend it?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, the USF is already coming up with a budget, and I hope if we can have all this laid out for our June meeting, when we do talk to when you're in a position to update our full board at our June meeting, be in a position to be able to look at the budget as well. And it's both the budget for the operational transition as well as the construction project, and where that budget is today and where it needs to be going forward. To John's point, a part of that budget needs to be designation of where the monies would come from, and to his very good point, remembering that some money is recurring, which means you can tap it long-term. Some is non-recurring. The carry-forward money, to his point, is non-recurring. It is an amount of money that once spent is gone. And so it is always to be mindful of those kinds of things.
Very good point. To have a budget, and Governor Tripp brought up an extremely good point, not just for 1 year. I mean, we ought to have a budget knowing exactly what the teach-out is going to cost, and have a budget from UF, what is going to help, you know, their help, and so put everything together. And I think with your help, John and Tim, you know, put it together, maybe in our June board meeting, if possible, for the board get a feel for what we have and how much we're short, and are we going to the legislators next year for additional dollars that needed, you know. And if that's the case, we need to know now, so we'll be able to talk about it, talk to the legislators, you know, and so everybody understands the process.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, make a comment.
Yes, sir.
I think we also need to contemplate the interaction between the Florida Polytechnic students and the USF teach-out students, because since USF's presence will be there for the next 2-3 years, seems to me highly likely that Florida Polytechnic students might want to avail themselves of courses that USF is teaching anyway. It makes no sense for USF to be teaching a classroom of 3 students to finish them out when there might be 20 or 30 Polytechnic students who would want to participate in that. And so I think there is going to be interaction. Under the articulation agreement, the students can use a class from any university. So I think that's something that should be considered as we define the budget. It should not be a distinct budget for USF and a distinct budget for FPU, because they're going to interact.
And that's where the shared services comes. That's what I was talking about. I agree. I can't imagine if you're teaching a course in accounting that there's 3 students in a class to teach out, that...
We'd have them come over to Tampa.
Are you?
The kind of sentiment is very clear. USF is going to leave Polk County.
But during the teach-out phase, Jan said that you would largely remain on the FPU
Yes, we will remain as long as there's USF students. Now, if there are 3, we'll have them come to Tampa, which is less than 40 minutes away.
So from Lakeland to the main campus is 40 minutes? Now, so let me ask you a question.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say, that's not what was said.
I was talking about SACs.
That's not what was said to SACs.
Wasn't that the SACs required
You've
teach
got
out?
homebound people that can't move. Now you're saying something different. I'm just saying, we got to be clear to the students.
Right, we have to be clear to the
I heard
students.
some students can't go 40 miles.
We will be there for the students, we will be working with the students, but we will be teaching out as well. And like you said, to teach a course, we will be scheduling them so that, and arranging their courses so that they are taught out. And we're not accepting new students. So it will,
That's not my point. You said if there's three, they got to drive to Tampa. That's not what you're telling Saks.
Because that was a point from Saks in the letter I
let
read.
my guru,
Yes, right.
Kathleen, Dr. Moore.
Dr. Moore,
I mean,
very good point.
maybe you're going to provide them bus service. I don't know. But, you know.
The goal of the Teach Out plan is to prepare a 3-year schedule in such a way that we hope that to minimize this idea of offering very, very small classes. We also, there are a significant number of programs that have been offered at USF Polytechnic that are all or mostly online. So the issue of place is going to be less significant. So, and so in the online courses, there will not only be the Teach Out students, but also students from the Tampa campus or any of the other USF campuses within the USF system who would like to take those courses, because the online courses can be taken by students in any location. So I don't actually foresee that there's going to be a major problem with serving very small groups of students. And then there are also possibilities for collaboration with Polk State College, which is on the same site. If we plan it well, that shouldn't be a problem for us, and we are trying to do that.
Well, and I would think you and the University of Florida, or whoever is over there, can work out, you'll figure out how to make this work so it's not extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah, your commitment to Saks is that you're going to accommodate every one of those students appropriately by student.
Right.
To be able to successfully navigate the Teach Out. If a student, let me give you a hypothetical, if one student in the last year of the Teach Out needed one course, that some accommodation, and that student was physically bound to Lakeland Polk County, your commitment is to that student's ability to complete that course for graduation, whatever that took. Whether it's online capability, whether it's partnering with Polk State, whether it's coming to Tampa, so that that student could accommodate that last course.
Yeah, what if that student doesn't graduate in the appropriate amount of time? I mean, that USF can't be sitting around for years
You know,
waiting
these
for
are
some
situations that we would work out.
Right.
Yeah, you work out.
This is a teach out. This is a working out phase that we have to
Right.
collaborate.
Right. No, that's the word that you use, collaborate. But again, you know, these shared services is one of the most important part of Board of Governors, you know, for us to be able to, all of our university to collaborate with each other and have shared services in different ways. And perhaps this could be one of them. When I say 3 students, maybe there's 10 students, and there's an accounting course. And as they can take it at the college, perhaps they can sign up and take it at the, at the Teach Out. Right, that's right. Okay.
Could I just make a comment? It appears to me, Joe, that the idea of much accommodation on new students is probably dead on arrival.
Of new students?
You said maybe we can put some new students in there. I'm just saying, my comments that I'm hearing here, that idea is dead on arrival.
Well, perhaps, but I think my comment still stands, which is to the extent that USF remains on the Florida Polytechnic campus for whatever reason, and I understand they're withdrawing, while they're there and offering courses, Florida Polytechnic should take advantage of that to the extent possible, and that affects the budget. This whole conversation just stemmed from my comment that we needed to look at the budgets jointly and not separately. That was my initial comment.
This is, I think there's, maybe I stated this too strongly and misinterpreted, but for example, we have a library right there. There is no reason why we can't share those kinds of things. That's what we do at USF. USF Sarasota Manatee, we share a library with New College. I mean, there's no reason to do these kinds of shared services. My comment was that it's been the sentiment that has come to us is that USF must vacate Polk County. That's the sentiment that I've been hearing.
President Genshaft, I think that's not how it was looked at. Looked at is they want, the legislators want to create new Polytechnic. And that, and I will tell you, and maybe I shouldn't repeat what the governor said, in his view, it had nothing to do if it's USF, UF, or UCF. It had to do more with maybe when you have a big ship, turning the big ship is much more difficult than creating a new, and that was percentage of STEM and things like this, and I'm just using those. So USF, we're proud of USF. We're proud of what you've done. If you look at the history of USF and what you have done, we're proud of. Everyone is. And, but extremely important to the Board of Governors to have shared services for all of us, because the efficiencies are very important, and I think it will all work out. I really do. Okay.
Okay. I'd like to turn now to the issue of building the new Florida Poly's academic program. And we've been talking so far today about the trustees in place, the presidents in place, and then getting students, recruiting students for fall 2013. But I'd like to turn attention to what happens between getting the president or a chief academic officer, a core of people, and then recruiting students. You've got to build that academic program. And for the campus to be able to receive students, you have to have something to market to them. You've got to hire the faculty. Typical faculty hiring is between November and March, okay? You have to have a cohesive curriculum in place consistent with the mission of a polytechnic. And that mission has to be consistent and aligned with the statewide strategic plan. So, there's that alignment. Here are just some of the areas of development that will need to be considered and addressed as the new institution develops the curriculum and proceeds towards SACS accreditation. Comprehensive standard 3.5.1. General education competencies must be identified. 3.7.1, the institution must employ faculty who are competent to teach in their fields. 3.9.3, the institution provides a sufficient number of qualified staff in student affairs. And here's a federal regulation that SACS looks at. Federal requirements include reporting data on student achievement, which includes graduation rates. So the new institution can move forward and apply for candidacy, and it will not have to graduate a new cohort, but to get full accreditation, it will. And in the interim, quite a bit of things have to happen. Senior academic staff need to decide on the program mix and program array. What programs are they going to develop? At which levels? Bachelor's, master's, more? And what about general education? That must be a part of every baccalaureate degree. Currently, college algebra, English is offered on the USF Poly campus. How will those continue? Delivery methods must also be considered. It's one thing if you've got new faculty on board to design face-to-face instruction. It's another thing to design hybrid or online instruction. Those may require instructional media designers, for example. If many of these programs are going to be online or hybrid, maybe there'll be a new model for this new Poly Will those online programs be marketed out of state or to international students? And if so, to what extent? All of this, you don't need to decide all of these, but if you're creating from scratch, as we've been talking about here, there are some opportunities. In some ways, it's easier to create from scratch because you don't have to deal with existing departmental structures. Well, do I know that? Or other things. But you do have to think longer term about getting things in place. So building a cohesive curriculum is going to be a challenge. The new institution is going to have to decide, are we going after a few focused areas, or are we going to offer a broad array? If you offer a lot of programs, you may be able to market that to students and recruit more students, but it's going to be a heck of a lot harder to ramp those up and get SACS accreditation, rather than if you're going after a few strategic programs. All of this needs to be thought about. Then the next thing is you got to hire the faculty. You can set broad general direction for the curriculum, and your senior academic officers should do that. But the faculty actually develop the courses. They are the content area experts. They're responsible for students, what students know and are able to do once they leave those courses. So the faculty hiring needs to happen too, after the broad general curriculum path has been established. Then I think you can recruit students because you have something to recruit them with. So these are all part of what SACS is going to be looking at as the new Florida Poly goes forward. As we've been talking here, it's exciting. There's opportunity. It's also daunting.
But Dr. Ignace, let me add something. I wouldn't be making it that strong that it's dead upon arrival unless we get an unbelievable, Mr. Touchton we get a huge support from the community of being able to get the students, be able perhaps to get, if I'm a student and I'm going to study STEM, that means those students have a higher grades and higher SAT, and these students can go to every university in Florida, from Florida to USF, to FSU, to UCF and FAU. So I'm going to decide to go to this new university, decide to go, and I'm going to be like any other. Why would I want to go there? Unless we come up with a program with the community support that we would welcome these students, offering them paid tuition, paid room and board, that kind of stuff. We're going to have a hell of a time bringing the students in. How are we going to ramp up? How do we all of a sudden going to have 1,000 students when we have going to teach out the number of students we have? Today we have, 800 and some students? What were, at the max, how many students did we have?
991, I think.
991 at the max. So for us to create a students institution of, let's say, 10,000 students as a university, we really, you can talk all about, the way we will do with education and curriculum and all of that, unless and when the community gets together. Because I don't think the government, I don't think the governor or the legislators are going to say, here, this is another $50 million, go get the students. I don't think that's going to happen. And I know that's not your issue, you did a great job. It's an issue that we've got to get the community to come forward and bring something special to the table for us to get the students. Mr. Shane, did you want to add something?
Yes, I'd just like to add, I think you have I want to go back to Provost Glover and your comment about we want to focus on the form of where we were going. And we were writing the USF brand, and now we're starting from scratch. And it's going to take the community, it's going to take the whole state system, just like you were talking about in your vision right there. And that's why I wanted to reaffirm that, because to be competitive and to draw that talent that you want, it's going to take the whole system making a statement and wrapping our arms around it to make it where we want it to go. At the same time, we're talking about faculty. We have faculty that we've been recruiting, and I've been sitting on the ACE work group, giving them tenure to recruit them here, thinking they're going to be at the Polytechnic of Florida. And now we're taking them into Tampa. And yes, we're all talking about starting a fresh slate, but there is some people that might want to move to or might be accepted into this new vision, if you will. So there's some efficiencies here by at least trying to collaborate between Florida and a USF and this faculty that's existing to streamline this. And absolutely, the collaboration is going to save us money and make a better product quicker. And we all want to start fresh, and we're all put in this political environment that we've just walked through carefully. But now we're very, very focused on the end of the student. My point is this. I want to applaud exactly where you're going with the system. I know that there are wounds in the USF hide, and me being a graduate and a native of Florida, I feel that pain that we went through, but that's behind us now. We got to make it better, and we got to focus on tomorrow and that vision of where we want to get to. So we got to look to the end, and I think we're really stuck in some of the tactical.
Yes, Mr. Shin, I mean, you have a very good point, because your chair, I read the letter that he wrote, or memorandum to the board, was very clear of what you just said, that we want to put the past behind us and we want to go forward. And applaud you, your board, for the commitment you all made to go forward. Because it was made very clear to me, at least, that your board and your president and your chair are absolutely committed to go forward. I understand the pain, I know the political, but as we all said, we are all Floridian, and we want our state to go forward. You know, we have USF, we have UF. What we're going to do is we're going to make this big plaque of says, you know, two hands of USF and UF, that how that collaboration created a wonderful Polytech. Because at the end of the day, what's left is going to be a university. I can't imagine when UF and FSU was created, and how was it created? Why was it in Gainesville or Tallahassee? Why was it in Miami at those days? You know, I am sure there was some politics involved at that time. But today, we have a wonderful university in Gainesville, we had a great university in Tampa, and that's how things happen, you know, and I'm hoping this collaboration, it has to be collaboration, and it has to be community involvement. The community, I think, it play a big role in helping the collaboration among all to make this thing work.
Mr. Chairman, back to the world of logistics. This is probably a statement of the obvious for those who just sat and heard Dr. Ignash's presentation about the academic program, so I waited until she was finished to do this. A provost, arguably the most important hire a president makes is the provost.
Did you hear that, Mr. Glover?
I didn't say they were always good decisions. I said the most important. No.
I heard that because a president needs to have a provost to sit in meetings like that.
But it is true. In deference to dear Dr. Glover, it is true. That position is essential, because what we do is academic. Everything else is important, but what we do is academic. If it weren't for that, we wouldn't be organized the way we are. To the logistics, a new president can't be hired until a board is in place and the search begun. It, if you recall the last time we met, by any headhunter's account, takes a minimum of 6 months, and that's fast track. To do a national search, to cull down applicants, do the interviews, and secure the services of a high-quality university president. Minimum of 6 months. So let's stay with a minimum. I won't be melodramatic and say it could be up to a year. Why is that important? because we want that new president to pick his or her provost. Now, if you put all of that into calendar context and start where we were before, which is to say we want students there by 2013, it's impossible that way. I make the case again that as we look for this cadre of folks to give to the new board, clearly critical will be academic people to begin to formulate, even in advance, well in advance of the new president being hired, a proposed academic array, begin the process of looking at what kind of faculty you want, how many programs you want to have in place. As mentioned, and really important, are you going to have 10 academic programs that will take years to build out so that a student can acquire a degree in any of them? Or are you going to minimize the number and more quickly be able to move toward termination point for a degree, so that when you go up on that website and when you say to students, Florida Polytech is where you want to be, there's also a very important commitment you're making to them that if you come here and you chase a particular program, you can get a degree in that program during the time that you will be a student at Florida Polytech. Those things have to be determined up front, and we've got to put an academic team on the ground immediately for the new board, even in advance of that president, who can then come in and not only oversee but grow that and select the person that he or she wants to build on top of that academic consideration.
Okay, the staff works for the chancellor, but they're my bosses, and we're passing the lunchtime, but I'm going to go to Governor Dick Beard.
Just one comment, and it reflects basically what Frank was saying. Last time we met, we talked about a timeline that would work under what we were planning on doing the last time. It seems to me that you were right. We need a timeline under the new program that tells us exactly how long it's going to take to get all this stuff done, including accreditation and presidents hired and getting all these people, so that the system and the political will of the legislature and everybody else knows exactly what we're talking about. And then we'll be able to tell if there are any shortcuts we can take to make it shorter.
And again, at the point of being redundant, we are working on all of that. I don't want anybody to leave here today and think that these kind of critical issues we only talk about whenever you all are good enough to come together and oversee this. We are building budgets, we are building timelines, Governor, we are looking at all the issues that have to be reconciled. I like what you said before. During the first transition, which is this immediate period, and then the longer-term transition to the new board and moving forward. So hopefully by our June meeting, you will be able to report to the board as much meat on the bone as is possible to put together by that time on all these issues.
Dr. Ignace, thank you very much. At this time, we will adjourn for half hour, only half hour for lunch. I think the lunch is next door. And you go through the doors and go back there. So when you exit the door, you go turn left and left again. And we will be back right at about 12:30. Thank you very much.